Howdy y'all, today we're talking about cowboy boots. Everything you need to know, how to pick the right cowboy boot for what you need it for, how to get the right fit, how to clean them, and then very end, we're gonna be talking about cowboy boot etiquette. So yeah, the first thing you're gonna do is you need to decide what kind of boots you want. You need to decide what you're gonna use the boot for. My thing, I wanted a boot that looks nice that I could wear to church. I needed a good boot that I could go dancing in. And those were the two things that I really wanted my boot for. I can also work in this boot too, but those were my main things. I'm not horseback riding in my boot, so that's something to know. So when I was looking for a boot, I was looking for square toe. I like how square toe looks. I like how square toe feels on my foot. I don't mind the rounded toe, slightly rounded, but generally it doesn't feel as good on my toes. So part of it is how you like the feel. If you like the feel of a square toed, go with the square toed. If you like the feel of a rounded toe, go with the rounded toe. If you are horseback riding, you probably want a slightly rounded toe. Now, I'm not talking about those ones that come to a complete point that are hanging, 6 inches off the end of your foot. That's ridiculous, not practical at all. But I'm talking about something that's practical. So if you are riding a horse, you probably don't want a square toe. It's harder to get in and out of the stirrup, and you're gonna have a harder time getting in and out. If you're doing horseback riding, you probably also want a leather sole. If you're dancing, you want a leather sole. Another thing, if you're horseback riding, this boot right here has what's called a double welt. And it means that it's stitched 2 times right here. So this part right here on the boot is called the welt, the upper, the sole, the heel. So the welt right here, they stitch it to hold everything in place. And this has a double stitch. The double stitch makes it stick out further. Now for me, that's not a problem. But if you do horseback riding, it might be a problem. The next thing you want to consider is, do you want a leather sole like this, or do you want a rubber sole? Now, if you want to go dancing, you want a leather sole. If you're horseback riding, you probably want a leather sole. It's easier to get in and out of the stirrup. Another thing, if you're looking for a dress boot, you want a leather sole. You don't wear a rubber sole cowboy boot to any sort of dressy event, because it's not considered dressy. So, but if you want the traction of a rubber boot, if you're going to be working in maybe wetter conditions, you probably want a leather sole. Next thing is to consider, this is a lower heel. They also have taller heels that are riding heels that you can do. Now, when it comes to getting a cowboy boot to fit right on you, you're going to be looking for a couple things. When you put the boot on, you should not be able to pinch anything right here. If I put this boot on, I can't pinch anything. I can't pinch anything. If you can pinch something, that is too loose. Another thing is, when you have the boots on, when you first get them in the store, they're not going to be molded to your feet at all. So if they feel a little bit different, that's all right. But when you take a step, your heel should leave the bottom of your shoe, anywhere to 1/4 of an inch. But your heel's supposed to slip, but it's not supposed to rub. If your heel's rubbing right here when you take a step, that boot's too tight. Now, if it's just rubbing a tiny bit, just a little smidgen, like you're barely touching it, they can put something in here to stretch the instep a little bit so you don't stretch. But if you're rubbing it a lot, that boot's too small for you. Also, if your heel is not lifting out of the boot at all, that boot is way too tight. You need it to lift any 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch out of the boot. Otherwise, you're gonna have tons of blisters. If it rubs, you're gonna have blisters. So you need it to lift without rubbing. How to care for your boots. So I see a lot of people who don't take very good care of their boots. They get them all dirty and they don't clean them. Now, I think that's a shame. Now, I've been walking around in the mud with these. They're not too bad. Bottom's dirty. But what you're gonna do is when you're ready to clean your boot, they sell brushes. I brought everything except the brush. Well, you're gonna take the brush, you're gonna rub it on, get off all that loose dirt. And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna take a washcloth, it just slightly damp, not soaking wet, just slightly damp, rub all that excess dirt off. Now, a lot of times, in this little wedge in between the heel and the upper, you can get dirt in there, and you can also get dirt along this stitch right here. Now, what you can do is you can take a toothbrush and go in there and scrub all that dirt out. So once your boots are all scrubbed off, you want to condition them. You want to keep the leather nice and supple, and you don't want it to be cracking. So you got a couple options here. Now, this right here is a conditioner. You can get this a lot of places. I got this right here at the Boot Barn. There's a lot of conditioners like this. All of them act very similar. This one is not as deep of a conditioner, but it soaks in real fast. So it's real nice if you clean off all your boots, and then before you go to bed, you slap this stuff on, and you then just let it soak in. They're ready to wear in the morning. The second option, which is a much more deeper soak, is mink oil. Mink oil is great, but it takes about 4 days to soak into your thing. So if you were to, condition them on Monday, then you gotta wait Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then you can wear them on Friday. But you gotta let this stuff soak in. It takes a lot longer, but you do get a much deeper condition. Now, if you have leather soles, I've never heard anybody talk about this, but if you have a leather sole cowboy boot, condition the sole. It makes it last a lot longer. It is pretty incredible what you can do with just condition the leather sole. You want it to be clean and dry. So what I do is I'll take the brush and go all over it, and a lot of times I'll condition the upper, and I won't do the sole yet because I want the sole to be completely dry, and then I'll go over it with the conditioner on the sole. Now, something that's different between a leather sole cowboy boot and a rubber sole cowboy boot is that you can get leather soled cowboy boots resoled. So if I wore through this leather right here, then I can take that to a cobbler and he can slap a new sole on it. And whereas with a rubber sole, because of how they make them, most of the time you can't do that. So it is an advantage. You can also get a half sole, because sometimes this back part here is fine, so they can just put a half sole on the front, and then the next time if you go to resole it again, they can do the whole thing. As far as cowboy boot etiquette goes, well, like I already said, you don't wear a rubber sole cowboy boot to church. You don't wear a rubber sole cowboy boot to a formal event. You wear a leather sole cowboy boot. Another thing with a leather sole cowboy boot is you see the color of the welt right here? That right there is your belt color. So your belt should always match that color right there. If you do have more of an exotic boot, you can match. If you have a snakeskin boot, you can wear a snakeskin belt if it's the same thing, and that works too. Now, when I was buying these cowboy boots, I had a couple criteria. Firstly, I wanted a leather sole. My main objective with these boots were to go dancing. That was my main thing. If you're gonna go dancing, like swing dancing, you want a leather sole cowboy boot. It is the best thing in the entire world to dance in. You can't change my mind over that. So I wanted a leather sole. I wanted square toe because my feet like a square toe better. I wanted something either made in the US, Canada, or Mexico. And then I wanted something that was just straight leather. I didn't want a suede. The suede is the other side of the leather. It's kind of like a fuzzy. The suede does not shed water as well. While the main purpose of these was to go dancing, I do work in these. So they have to be able to shed water. They still have to be able to do the job that a normal boot's gonna do. I'm not one of those people that's gonna put plastic bags over my cowboy boots to protect them. They gotta be able to stand for their own with a little bit of weather. So I needed something that was just normal leather. Now, if you get a scratch on your cowboy boots, I got a little one here. I was working in the shop. I got a little scratch. What you do is you take a little bit of conditioner like this, you rub it in, that scratch goes away. The other day, I don't even know which boot it's on. I don't even know. The other day, I scratched the corner of one of my boots on a concrete step. And when I got home, I cleaned off my boots. I rubbed the conditioner in, and I can't tell which boot it's on. So yeah, that's about everything you need to know about cowboy boots. If you got any other questions, put them in the comments. And I guess if you want a video about cowboy hat etiquette, let me know if you want a video about that too.